Hi.
So, hi again. Uh, so first of all, we have, due to the night time, we have some participants here, but hopefully we'll broadcast it to a lot of audience later in the day in Pakistan as well. I know it's a very early morning for you, so
Yeah.
thank you so much. Yeah, so thank you so much for taking out the time. Uh, so let me just start off by introducing myself. My name is Arzish Azam. I run Ejad Labs, which is a digital accelerator that essentially helps Pakistani entrepreneurs and programs to build the startup ecosystem in general. A lot of our programs are designed to help startups or companies that are targeting the global market. And in this regard, one of the products that we launched recently, we call it Ejad Plus. We essentially help sort out all the legal issues when a Pakistani entrepreneur is trying to set up a global business, which most of the times tends to be like a US registered company. And your company, Mercury, has been an amazing facility, I would say, for all these international entrepreneurs looking to sell globally or who have customers in the US or investors in the US. So thank you so much for starting it.
Yeah, no problem. I'm glad to get any extra customers. All these entrepreneurs are doing us a service too.
Absolutely. So for the audience, we have today Immad Akhund. He's the CEO and founder of Mercury. He grew up in Pakistan, which I've just learned myself in Karachi till the age of 9. Immad is, currently the founder of Mercury, which is a tech company which provides builds banking for startups, which a lot of you may know, especially in Pakistan because we've done extensive marketing. But prior to Mercury, Immad was the CEO and co-founder of Heyzap, a mobile developer tools company, which was sold for 45 million in 2016. And the co-founder of Clickpass, another company which was acquired by Yola in 2008. He's an active investor in Silicon Valley, based out of Silicon Valley, and he has invested in more than 100 seed state startups. So thank you so much again, Immad, for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So let me start off with my first question. So you've started multiple companies, you've invested in tens of them. How did you essentially, came from this investment slash serial entrepreneur background and started off Mercury, which is somewhat different from the companies that you've done before. And with fintechs, it involves a lot of regulatory stuff and a lot of red tape probably. And you've had to figure it all out. And now Mercury is the go-to solution for looking for banking services, whether they're based inside the US or for a lot of them who are based outside in the US. For many of these international entrepreneurs, I don't think it was easy to get US banking services or start a startup in the US before, but Mercury has definitely helped make it easier for a lot of these people.
Yeah. I've been doing startups for a long time. I did my first one in 2006. And I guess through that, I've been using, these banks. I guess everyone uses a bank when they're running a business. And it was always just very painful. So I actually had the idea for Mercury in 2013. I just, over time from 2006 to 2013 and onwards, all of these business tools have improved, right? Like back in 2006, getting card processing was a pain, right? You'd had to do this thing called authorize.net. You'd have to persuade a bank to be a merchant, open a merchant account for you. It was really painful. And then obviously Stripe came along and that became a lot easier. Same thing with payroll. Same thing with communication, like Slack and things like that have improved things a lot. So, you could see this kind of general progression, whether it was fintech services or just kind of B2B kind of services. They were becoming consumerized, they were becoming easier, better, and more fluid. But that wasn't happening in banking. And then after I sold my previous company in 2016, I eventually decided to do another startup. I'd had this idea for a really long time. Even though I didn't have a fintech background, at least from a entrepreneurial perspective, I knew exactly somewhat what the product needed to be. I know what the entrepreneurial pain point was. I knew how to get distribution. I think sometimes people blow up fintech and regulation a little bit. They're like, oh, this is so scary or hard. But really, actually, the hardest thing in fintech is like making a good product that people want and having distribution. Like, I know it feels like the regulation and things like that are hard, but those are like fixed kind of costs that you can figure out if you go talk. Like, I talked to maybe 60 lawyers, maybe 40 different entrepreneurs that had done fintech companies. If you just like do the time, you can figure out those kind of, I mean, it's different when you're doing things that are like legally gray or black. But doing a business bank is not legally complicated. Like, there's many business banks that already exist. The fact that it's online is like a little bit of a difference, but it's not. We weren't legally or regulatory wise, we weren't doing something that was like breathtakingly like ambitious, right? It's the hard bit is like kind of stitching together all the services and product and having good distribution and all of that kind of stuff. So that was kind of my view on it. The funny thing is, I grew up in Pakistan. I moved from Pakistan to England when I was 9, and then moved from England to the US when I was 23. So as an immigrant entrepreneur, it was really important to me to serve like foreign founders, right? I was like, okay, anyone could set up a company in the US. I want to serve these foreign founders. Many of them moved to the US, but they don't have residency straight away. And that's the status I was in. When I first moved to the US, it took me 11 months before I was, for 11 months I was traveling back and forth on like a visitor visa. And like, it was a very stressful process. So that was kind of my view. And that's like, we actually ended up, before we even launched, we switched. So how it works in the US when you do a bank like Mercury is you work with these kind of existing regulated banks as like they're like the back end kind of regulated provider. So we actually ended up switching banks once even before we launched, because the first bank told us we'd be able to work with foreign founders, and then when push came to shove, they didn't want to do it. So it's funny because like now, it's about 50% of our users sign up from outside the US. But it wasn't even like, I didn't think it would be, it was important to me, but it wasn't necessarily like a thesis of the company that half our growth would come from like foreign founders.
Oh, that is fantastic. Even I wasn't expecting this kind of, I would say, percentage, right? And just because, I am representing Pakistan, and you're originally from Pakistan as well. I hope a lot of those users are from Pakistan, and will play our part in enabling a lot more Pakistani entrepreneurs to get on board. Because as you talked about, setting up a fintech is maybe in the US, it's not that big of a challenge regulatory wise, right? But in Pakistan, even for, unfortunately, even due to all these regulations and stuff, even for sometime for an individual freelancer, it's difficult to open an individual account, right? So we're in that state of I think the environment plays a very important role in creating like an enabling ecosystem, right? And we're collectively trying to fix all these issues locally. But when especially companies are trying to target the global market from a country like Pakistan, where there are a lot of challenges with like remittances and payments coming inside Pakistan, it is very, very helpful to have like this US company, especially because a lot of these products are like SaaS companies or sometimes services companies, but essentially they are targeting the global market. They're providing a global service, so it doesn't really matter where they're from, right? What you talked about, and I think it is a very noble cause that Mercury has addressed and consciously addressed in helping foreign founders. I would also like to, since we've all went through this COVID period, which is definitely new in history. But with a company like Mercury, which essentially enables a process that, for the US market, maybe definitely involves going to the bank and stuff. So how has this COVID period been for Mercury, and what has changed? What has your growth been like?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a lot of uncertainty in kind of May and June where, things did slow down, like less people wanted to start companies, they weren't sure what's happening, etc. But since then, it's picked up nicely, and we're already kind of growing pretty fast, so it's kind of continued on our growth trajectory. So we've been growing fairly consistently, like 15% a month or so. There's definitely a little bit more of there was a set of people that were willing to go walk into a Chase or a Bank of America to set up a bank account. And now, either those places aren't open at all, and they have to use Mercury to sign up online. So one of the things that maybe is not obvious to your audience, but even if you live in the US, apart from Mercury, there's not that many places for you to sign up online for a business bank account. So for all of these kind of large incumbent banks, you have to walk into a bank branch. So I've heard stories of bank branches being closed, and taking like several weeks to get an appointment to open a bank account, and all of these frustrations from trying to open a bank account with these incumbents have helped kind of Mercury, and I think it's kind of aligned with also where we see the future, which is more and more businesses that are digital first, that have to sell online, that have to I think those types of businesses want an online bank like Mercury. They don't want to have like these kind of old school banks, and it's kind of accelerated this trend that was already happening with businesses being kind of more about digital services.
Absolutely, and I think even other than those challenges, there are sometimes like really weird things, because at my accelerator, we bring the largest Pakistani IT delegation to Silicon Valley. We've done it for the past 3 years. This year in February, they were like 50 people. Hopefully not in the coming February, but in June 2021, we hope to resume and bring a very large group as well. So sometimes there are experiences where a foreign founder who's here on a tourist visa, he went to one branch of a bank and they clearly refused to open a bank account, right? But at the same bank at a different branch, they would accommodate, right? So it's even a straightforward process is not very simple for someone who's visiting or foreigner, right? And I think even for them, Mercury has kind of solved this very big issue which they were facing, right? And then I think in Pakistan they have this like PayPal issue as well, and this is one of the fixes to have like a US company and then get all these services that are available for US companies. And definitely, I think I was personally planning to travel to the US, and I know of a lot of friends who were planning to travel for other stuff, but also for like their business needs. But they seem to be sorted with Mercury. So my next question would be, now that you've got a lot of like new users in COVID and a lot of growth as well, are there any new exciting updates coming to Mercury?
Yeah, I mean, we're always trying to improve things. We're actually doing a big kind of announcement. How many days? In 6 days' time. So I don't want to ruin that. But it's around kind of helping people manage their cash. Another big thing we're working on is an Android app. I know that's our biggest kind of requested feature. I'm guessing a lot of Pakistani people use Android and would love to have an app. So we have an iOS app, but we don't have an Android app. So it's not imminent. We just kind of kicked it off. But hopefully, early next year we can get it. But yeah, we're always doing kind of smaller improvements. So actually, one big thing we just launched last week is support for international shipping for debit cards. So before last week, you had to find like a mail forwarder or some other service to get the Mercury debit card to you. But now we can ship it internationally. So that's a big deal for our customers. And let's see, let me try to think of other things. I know we've got 24 engineers now, and we're just always kind of improving things, fixing bugs, all that kind of stuff. So we should keep seeing some kind of fun stuff coming out from us.
Absolutely. I think this international shipping will help a lot of people because one of the services that we provided as a friend to a lot of people is that to have them ship it to one of our friends' houses or someone, and then someone who's traveling would carry them. or otherwise you just ship it to like a virtual address and have DHL and FedEx, which is also a very long process. But this will definitely be helping a lot of people. One of the other questions, like or the primary questions that we get a lot from people in Pakistan, or I'm sure you get as well, is that so Mercury does allow international wires to a lot of countries, and Pakistan is not one of them, which I'm assuming is because of all these like FATF issues and stuff that we have. But
I guess I should have added that one as well. We have a new. It was mostly because of the provider that we were using for international wires. We have a new provider that isn't fully live. I think it'll be live next week or the week after. But we've got about 10% of our customers using that provider. And with that provider, we can do international wires to 150 countries, including Pakistan.
Oh, wow.
So that's also going live pretty soon to everyone. But if someone needs, to get into the beta because they need this now, just kind of either email me or email help@mercury.com. I am Immad@mercury.com.
No, that is just fantastic. That is the most amazing update we could have gotten out of you today.
Okay. Yeah.
So we have, for IT companies, there's like tax regime in Pakistan, so we don't have to pay taxes on international income, right? Okay. But if they're not, because the wire option was not available, so a lot of time people had to use like TransferWise or Zoom. But with wire, they can just like Ejad Labs Inc. could send money to Ejad Labs Private Limited, which is an IT company in Pakistan, and essentially not have to pay any like sales taxes and other stuff. Which is some facilitation from the.
Wait, so if you use TransferWise, you would have to pay sales taxes?
So if we use TransferWise, we're not allowed to send money to Pakistani business accounts. So what we have to do is send our personal account. Okay. And then with personal remittance, there's a limit that you can do tax-free. And then you have to pay taxes. So for a small company, it is fine. It is a workaround, I would call. But then this is an amazing update, and this will definitely one of the other reasons why we wanted this is because when it comes to as like wire to all these IT companies, it essentially shows up in the state bank as IT industry income, right? So we have an industry which is officially $1 billion, but unofficially we believe it is around $4 billion, where money is not being recognized by the state bank as IT revenue, but maybe as remittance and other stuff. So this will definitely help bring our numbers up. And I know of a lot of people who will be happy because of this news.
Okay, great. Yeah, see, I forget all the good things we're working on. That one is going to be pretty big.
Absolutely. All of them are fantastic things. So we have 2 questions here, and I'd love to take them if you allow.
Sure.
Okay, so the first one is from Jack, who's from Berlin. That is amazing. So he's saying that we are seeing more international capital entering Pakistan and in Pakistani startups. So what are your views on these developments, and are you participating? And I'm not sure how closely do you keep kind of yourself updated with the Pakistani tech ecosystem, but in the past 1 year, surprisingly throughout COVID as well, there have been at least 10 startups who've raised a lot of funding in e-commerce, in logistics. There have been 3 startups who got into YC that focus primarily on the Pakistani market, and they're in B2B commerce. So these are some amazing developments that have happened in the past 1 year. And in the past 3 years, there have been a lot of investments in the whole ecosystem.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. I talked to one YC company. Was it SafePay? Is that a Pakistani company?
Yes, that's true.
I mean, the US investors are always looking for what's the new market, whether India had a startup boom, and LATAM, Latin America had a big startup boom. And, Pakistan is a natural place to look just because 240 million people, something like that. Very young population. It's the GDP growth has been very strong. So I think there's a lot of positive indicators. Hopefully, Imran Khan is gonna, have like a fairly stable government for some time, which is gonna also, help kind of these international investment efforts. So I'm definitely hearing more about Pakistan. Obviously, it's a very nascent industry. So yeah, and I think one thing. So I do invest in non-US companies, but like relatively rarely. Maybe it's like 10% of my portfolio, or maybe 15%. And I haven't done any Pakistani yet. If you see a good one, let me know, and I will. I'm definitely interested.
We have a lot of good ones.
Good. But yeah, I mean, the key for US investors is it has to be like incorporated in the US. Like they don't, US investors don't want to try to understand like global business laws. So that's definitely important. And yeah, they're open to it. I think it's a bit of like, there's always, I think we're still at the stage where like one hasn't broken through, right? Like as soon as you get one like Pakistani unicorn, like $1 billion company in Pakistan, it kind of paves the way for like the rest of them. And the same thing has happened in India and Latin America, and obviously China before that. So yeah, I think it's still like a very nascent industry, but I've definitely heard much more about it. And it's nice that YC has been investing in Pakistani startups. Like that's YC tends to be a little bit of a trailblazer in these kind of things. Like they invest relatively early in these markets. They've also started investing quite a lot in African companies, and that's especially African companies in Nigeria also like kind of facing a boom right now. It's nascent, but it's interesting, and I'm interested in it, and I know a lot of my other friends that are investors are interested in it. Not all investors will do it. Like I think, especially VCs are like, it takes a while for them to really get interested in taking risks. Well, it's Silicon Valley VCs, but there's also a lot of these kind of VCs that are focused on emerging markets in Asia, like DST, Tiger Global, and all of those things. And they will probably, enter it before some of these Silicon Valley VCs do.
Absolutely. And then one of the other good things that happened in the past 1 year is that Zameen.com, which is a very popular Pakistani startup, actually became the first unicorn that started out of Pakistan. So they started out of Lahore, and then they're headquartered in Dubai right now because of regulatory issues, but they are in Europe and a lot of like MENA region countries. Before that,
I actually thought it was a Middle Eastern company. I didn't realize it started in Pakistan.
So we also like to call Kareem a Pakistani success story because the co-founder is Pakistani, but technically Kareem was started in Dubai. But with Zameen, the difference is, one of the co-founders is still in Lahore. The huge team is Lahore, and they started out of Lahore, right? So our definition is, if it started out of Lahore, it's the first homegrown Pakistani unicorn. Right, so that has been a big news for the whole ecosystem, a big validation of starts, and then a lot of these international investors investing, a lot of like diaspora Pakistani investing. There's a lot of Silicon Valley people who have invested. So those are really like amazing developments, and we hope to when the COVID. When we return to a normal world, when we bring a lot of like cool startups from Pakistan to Silicon Valley, we hope you can interact them and meet them and kind of see what has been happening on the ground here. We do have another question from Muiz, who's running a fantastic startup out of Islamabad. So he's saying that, number one, he's a huge fan of Mercury. He wants to ask you, what's your investment thesis in general? And now, since you have started a rolling fund, how have you reshaped your thesis?
I don't think it's changed too much. I mean, in general, I invest in like things that I, understand. So I do a lot of kind of software, B2B stuff, and I also end up doing a lot of kind of autonomous vehicles and healthcare, and nowadays a lot of fintech. The main spaces I don't do is like biotech and some of these other kind of hard sciences that I'm not an expert on. And the rolling fund hasn't changed things too much for me. I was previously, before the rolling fund, a little bit more focused on Y Combinator companies. Nowadays, with the rolling fund, I'm just more flexible and having a little bit more capital and investing outside. I've been doing fairly consistently, I guess, over the last 4 years. I've been investing in kind of 2 or 3 startups a month, and that's I kind of continue doing that. So I guess number one, markets that are huge. I want to really believe this could be like $1 billion or $10 billion company, and then entrepreneurs that have shown like a lot of kind of grit and grind. Whether they've done other startups before or like in other aspects of life, that they just like seem like they're very committed and want to like really build something big. Those are probably like the 2 main things I look for.
We have a lot of like Pakistani entrepreneurs who start something that is probably for the like more suited for the global market, and they end up moving to Silicon Valley or moving to someplace else. And there are a lot of them who are in touch with me, who are part of our small community here. Some of them are moving to Canada in the coming years. Some of them have already moved to Silicon Valley. A lot of them are going to Estonia. There's this interesting startup visa program from Estonia, but I'd love to make some introductions as well. And now that we are, so we've got 1 minute left from the time that we have taken from you. So with this, I would like to, number one, thank you for your time, and thank you for starting an initiative that is helping a lot of people, and especially a lot of like Pakistani entrepreneurs, which is definitely close to a lot of our hearts. And we look forward to interacting with you in Silicon Valley, and hopefully inviting you to Pakistan for one of our big Startup Grind Pakistan conferences when things return to normal.
Yeah, I'd love that. I mean, I feel like as a Pakistani, I haven't supported Pakistani entrepreneurs enough. So, if I can help in some way, I'd love to.
I can guarantee you that you have supported a lot of Pakistani entrepreneurs. And if you want a list, we have a list of a lot of companies.
It's fine. I have my own list. But
they can verify.
In a more direct way as well.
Yeah, perfect. Absolutely. No, so this is fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. It was great talking to you.
Yeah, great talking to you too. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye.